Welcome to the Computer Podcast, direct from Ottawa, Canada's capital. I'm your host, Norman Jack. With me, of course, my co-host, George Valenzuela. George, how are you doing?
I am doing well, Norm. How are you today?
Not too bad, thank you very much. Surviving the lockdown and various places around the globe starting to ease things off, so we're keeping our fingers crossed here. With us, of course, as well, our special guest, Paul Middleveen from the Trailing Edge, tte.ca. Paul, how are you today?
Hi, doing very well. Thank you.
Good. That's good to hear. Lots of things going on this week, and what we want to do is talk about some things that came up in the news as well. We're also going to be renewing our Tech Talk show this particular episode. Once a month, we're going to be taking your technical questions, problems, and issues and trying to solve them here on the podcast. You can just email your concerns or questions that you may have to thecomputerpodcast@gmail.com. Let's get going within the news first. And one of the things that came up new this particular week that really didn't surprise me all that much is that Google has decided to make its business video meeting service free to everyone. Now, you know, Google Meet was only for subscribers to the G Suite software tool set, which you had if you were a business and you paid so much monthly for the privilege here. And that allowed you to get online and have conference calls and group meetings via video and all of that. But of course, with the huge popularity of conferencing software like Zoom, and then Facebook's decision to jump into the fray as well with a similar type of system, and WhatsApp, which is owned by Facebook, increasing the number of participants in a video call from 4 until 8, I guess, George, it was only a matter of time before Google had to give.
Yeah, and they had been contemplating, and I think they already have officially got rid of Hangouts, although I see them still around. They're really not pushing that anymore. It's in that kind of Google limbo. Yeah. So it was inevitable, you're right, that Google would push this forward. It looks suspiciously a lot like Zoom, or WhatsApp with more than 8, up to 8 people. It's decent. It's and it's very serviceable. Obviously, if you have a Google account, it's included for free, as you said. But I don't know if there's something special that you have to. I did try, logging on to the Meet site, and it says I can only join meetings. I don't know if you have to be a G Suite user to actually host the meeting first, or if you have to apply for some special request to get it. So it's free to use, but I think it's just free to join. I'm not sure if maybe it's only in Canada that happened. I'm not sure. Anyways, I was just curious to try it out because I'm kind of a Google fan, and that's what I found. So
I think the issue is the fact that Google's going to, quote, roll it out over the next few weeks. So some people may have it already. You obviously are not one of them.
Clearly, I'm not on Google's rollout list.
Yeah, the only thing you have to do is create a Google account to take part if you don't have one already, and that's simply as easy as creating a Gmail account. So, that's easy enough to do here. There'll be a 60-minute time cap, but they're not going to start enforcing that until the end of September, which is interesting. I guess the question is, what do you do at the end of the pandemic when everything gets back to, as close to normal as we're going to see? Do you start charging for it again? Do you try and convince those people who have joined because it's free and they want to talk to their family and friends that they should pay for this now? And if not, that's it, you're cut off? Or what do you do? Offering something free like this is a great service, but what happens when all of this is over and you try and generate some revenue out of this?
Well, I'm sure that Google will want people liking it so much that they, wouldn't consider paying for it. They already offer premium services for additional storage, using Google One, their Google Music app, Google Play app, it's called, $9.99 per month, I think, to get music and video and so on. I don't see this as being any different. Rather than just having it for business users, they might say, okay, if you liked it, $5 a month, and you can use it for up to 600 meeting minutes a month or something like that. Yeah, and you can buy additional minutes. That's the way I see it, as maybe a subscription service for the regular user.
Okay, yeah. So they'd keep a very basic service for free and then charge for anything over that.
Yeah, and maybe it's additional features like screen sharing and so on will cost you a little bit extra, maybe something like that. Yeah.
Well, that's the similar model that Zoom has right now. I mean, their limit is 40 minutes on a meeting right now, unless you subscribe. So, they seem to have suspended that for the time being, but it's going to go back into effect. They've got to generate revenue somehow. But
exactly.
let's face it, when you go from 20 million users to 300 million users in less than 2 months, chances are that even if you lose half your new subscribers, you're still way far ahead than you were before.
Exactly. And I think Google's trying to leverage their fairly large user base. I think Gmail is fairly ubiquitous. So in theory, they've just captured potentially 1 billion users, right? So they're hoping that at least a small percentage of that sticks and they make a little bit of extra revenue.
Of course, speaking of Gmail, you can always email us your questions or comments or maybe suggestions for topics you'd like us to talk about. Just email it to thecomputerpodcast@gmail.com. All right, being that it's our Tech Talk show, time to get to questions that people have submitted, problems and issues they've been having over the last little while. I'll start out with one here. This is from Suraj. He says, welcome back. Glad to hear you're back on the air. Thank you very much. I'm having trouble with my internet connection. It drops with no warning, and sometimes I have to try several times before it will reconnect. I keep getting the message, internet connected, no service. How can I fix this? Sounds like a router issue.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, like you're saying, I would reboot my router first try, and in many cases, routers their IP table for IP addresses after several months of use can sometimes fill up. That can sometimes have an issue, especially when you're bouncing around throughout your house. So definitely reset it. Also, it could be your network card too. There could have something happened to the driver possibly. Maybe an update went through, so you may want to check that and reinstall your network card driver. How about you, George? What would you suggest here?
Well, I was going to suggest the same thing. So that internet connected no service usually means that your Wi-Fi is connected to your router, but your router is not reaching your external internet IP. So if you do have a system perhaps where you've got your internet provided router, but you're serving your Wi-Fi out of, say, an internal router. So like I've got a couple of routers in the house. Consider first restarting that router. And if that doesn't work, then just restart the modem and or router that's provided by your service provider.
When you guys talk about rebooting those routers, what do you do? Is it as simple as unplugging it and leaving it for 15 or 20 seconds and then plugging it back in and letting it reboot?
Yeah, pretty much. They suggest 30 seconds to a minute to unplug it, just to let all the power drain from all the circuitry in there. Mm-hmm. But most of the time it takes anywhere from 1 to 5 minutes for the modem to come back up and get all initialized. Usually that gets rid of your problem 80% of the time. As I say, rebooting also resets everything, just like your computer. So most of the time that gets rid of the problem.
Don't discount also giving your service provider a call. Sometimes they'll be able to monitor, well, not sometimes, most of the time, they'll be able to monitor from their end. They'll ask for some information. They'll be able to log into the router and check the status. A lot of times they might have to boost a signal going into your router. Maybe it's just a question of some extra line noise because you got more people in your neighborhood. Think about it. There's a lot more people at home using the internet. So these providers have had to beef up their infrastructure a little bit, and there's a little bit of hiccups here and there and some growing pains. So don't be afraid to give them a call and say, hey, I'm having this issue. And if you've tried those other things, they might be able to help you out as well.
Okay, so hopefully that helps Surash's problems as well. Okay, here's one. I have a laptop with a built-in camera, and I've been told it could be open to hackers if I leave the laptop on. Is it better to use the embedded camera in the laptop, or should I buy an external one for video meetings that I do mostly with the family? I guess the first thing to do is put a pice of tape over your internal camera, unless you're actually using it.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's the first thing I thought of. Yeah. So our work laptops have cameras embedded in them, and that's one of the things that we're encouraged to cover the camera, especially if you leave the laptop up and you're in the office. It could be exposing some notes that are sensitive or something in the background. But yeah, definitely I wouldn't leave the laptop cover up in my bedroom while I'm sleeping or whatever. So I would definitely flip the lid out or keep it covered with a piece of paper or a piece of tape. Yeah.
Now, is it better to get an external camera, or does that make any difference?
You could use an external. The main thing is you still have that webcam integrated into your notebook. So you would probably want to go into your BIOS or device manager and disable the onboard if that's what you're trying to do, is stop that camera from working, period, and using an external. Because at least the external source, the hardware is only there while it's connected. and then it's gone when you don't have to worry about anybody looking at you.
Yeah.
A lot of laptops too will, I don't want to say discourage, but will offer quite a bit of additional software with the laptop, that with the, with the provided OS, to take advantage of the camera. So a lot of times you want to keep the camera because you can take funny pictures with it. You can put like stuff in the background and so on. So just if you cover it with a piece of paper, a piece of tape that you can easily take off and put back on when you don't need it, I think that's safe enough. I think the embedded camera's all right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully that's interesting though. What would hackers do with it? Is that really the point of it, George, to try and spy something that may be confidential?
Oh God, no! There are websites dedicated, and I'm trying to remember the name. I think it's Shodan. I'm not sure if it's .org or .something, but it is a database of cameras and microphones and systems that have been hacked. Right, so various systems that, hey, if you go to this URL or if you go to this and you have this exploit, you can look at this person's camera, and they just turn the camera on and they can watch you doing whatever they want. Right, whatever you've got your camera pointed at, they're watching. So
wow,
it's not necessarily trivial, but it can be done, by someone who knows what they're doing quite easily. So definitely worth covering up those cameras and closing the lid when you're not using your laptop. No point in leaving the lid up. Let it go to sleep. That's what it's designed to do. Let the computers rest, for goodness sake.
That's right.
They're working so hard these days.
Well, we were talking earlier about the note from Suraj about his router issues and his internet connection issues. I think a lot of people have to understand, too, that, when you're at home, if you're working from home or you've been, self-isolating at home and you've been on your computer, your laptop, your tablet, or even your cell phone a lot more than maybe you usually would, make sure you actually turn it off every once in a while and give it a bit of a rest, because you're going to run into the same issues that Suraj may be running into with his router. Your memory is going to get all clogged up. The circuits are going to get all jammed up with little bits and bytes that it really doesn't need anymore. And you will eventually find issues with performance if you're not careful.
And if you listened to our show last week, you should be taking a break anyways. Get up off of your chair, away from your desk, and take a break for 10 minutes. At least once every other hour or every hour. That's the recommendation.
Now, here you go, George. When do you turn your cell phone off? How often do you turn it off? Every night?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot. No, I never turn my cell phone off. No,
but you do reboot it about once a week.
At least once a week, yeah, or on demand as it's complaining.
Okay, I think we've got time for at least one more question here. This is from Gord. He says, "Hello, my laptop takes forever to boot up. I have an HP Elite that is just 3 years old, and I am running Windows 10. Can you suggest how to speed things up?"
That one goes right in line with two that I got from some customers.
Oh yeah.
Again, with everybody working from home and all of us using our equipment, we tend to be doing way more than we used to on our home PCs, and a lot of our work stuff is all being done there as well. So you got more windows open, more applications running, and this is right along those lines of what people have been asking. Why is my system so slow? It used to be super fast. It's because we're doing so much more with them. So on these older machines, a lot of the older machines had mechanical hard drives. So one quick way to make any of your older equipment run much quicker and more efficiently is with a solid state drive. There's no moving parts. They're relatively cheap and very, very reliable now. We can easily switch your drive over by you doing a cloning process, or essentially we have the exact same copy of what you have moved over to the new drive. So that's an excellent way to make your old computer almost new again. And also RAM definitely makes a big difference in this case too. If you find your computer running slow, the more and more applications you're running, the more RAM you need, because it's like your desktop with all your paperwork on it. So anybody out there that's running 4 gigs and you're doing a lot of stuff, I would definitely recommend you bump it up to 8 gigs of RAM. And that should be suffice for most people out there. But hey, more the merrier. If you're willing to bump it up to 16 or more, by all means do that. But most people should run really well on their older machines if they just upgrade the RAM a little bit, maybe to 8 gigs, and or switch their hard drive over to a solid state if they have a mechanical.
One of the other things, too, I guess, to consider, Paul, is, as you mentioned, we're running a lot of apps that maybe we wouldn't be running normally, and all sorts of programs and stuff. Maybe actually go into the Add Remove Programs area and look at the stuff that Oh, geez. I didn't know I had that on my computer. I haven't used that since, 1997. Maybe I should remove it and open up some space.
Absolutely. Yes, I would definitely do that. And in Windows 10, if you go into the task manager, they have a nice startup tab that's very easy to enable and disable the various components. And I think they'll even give you an approximate timeline of how long it's affecting your boot. So if there's, like you said, if there's certain programs or features you're just not using, you can go there and disable a couple of them. Keep your devices to a minimum or only what you're using.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of programs that will start up automatically that we probably don't know about and probably don't need to start right away.
Yeah, making your overall boot time a little slower and every app running a little slower. But the nice thing is when they do a pre-launch, it does make that application launch faster when you do initialize it.
Yeah.
So there's ups and downs.
That's the trade-off for sure. Let's move on to favorite things to do on the computer now that we're all locked up at home. Restricted in our movements and such. We've had a lot of great suggestions over the last little while about things to keep us occupied, things to keep us productive. One of the things I found was, I've got Netflix, I've got Amazon Prime, I've got all of these video services, the various TV networks and all of that sort of stuff. And there's some good stuff on there, and I enjoy watching several of the shows there. But, I'm into documentaries. Sorry, I like documentaries. I like to look at past events, past history, whether it be natural history or political history. I found an operation that's called Curiosity Stream. Their website is curiositystream.com. They're relatively new, and they've got hundreds and hundreds of different documentaries out there. Already, I've powered my way through a BBC 5-part documentary on the British Empire, taking a 21st century look back at the British Empire, which was really intriguing. I've seen a 3-part, really neat 3-part series on 3 of the 5 great extinction events that occurred in the globe's history over the last 4.5 billion years. And I also saw a series of 6 shows based on how humans started to diverge from our chimpanzee, etc. ancestors several million years ago. And the thing about these documentaries is by involving live actors and really, really good CGI these days, it's amazing what they can do with these particular documentaries. Now, the cost, I got a deal that they have on now for a year. It cost me $12 US, which is about $17 Canadian. The regular price is $20 US. So even if you don't get the special, which I think is on until sometime in May, you're still getting $20 US. That's like $27 Canadian. It's still only about $2.50 Canadian a month for this. And it's a fascinating place to go if you're into documentaries. So you can check that out. It's CuriosityStream.com is the website to go, and of course you can check for the app as well on both services because they've got them there as well. But it's a little more detailed on the website, and you get a better idea as to what programming is available out there. Now, Paul, you've been working around with iTunes, is it?
Yeah, I just noticed that iTunes, they have iTunes U, so it's a free educational app for many different courses, from A to Z, literally. Now, of course, with any app that you have out there, there is paid content. So the deeper you need to delve into your education, they might expect to pay a little bit. But overall, there's lots of free courses that you could take, and I would recommend giving that a try. Also, like a lot of people out there, they want to learn more about computers or how to play with them. There's another website called Code Academy. Essentially for basic interactive lessons and daily coding sessions, get your hello world going for several different languages. The basic package is free, which is wonderful, but again, they do have a pro package, and that's $20 a month. But the free for doing all your online practices, you can pick any of do all your basic courses, and it's all there available for you free of charge. It's just if you need to get more in depth and start getting on real world projects, and if you need step-by-step guidance, with a tutor and have peer support, that's when you would go into the premium content. To do it more on your own and just do the basic level courses, it's free. Codecademy.com.
All right, that's all the time we've got for the Computer Podcast for this week. My thanks to Paul Middleveen, our special guest. Paul, we'll see you next week.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for having me.
And my co-host, George Valenzuela. George, we'll see you next week.
We'll see you, Norm.
On the Computer Podcast. Interesting programming.